All right, really big card coming at us tonight. We got Holm taking on Irene Aldana. Matt, who doesn't get excited about that? And I spoiled my surprise. Ooh boy, but we got a great one. Make sure you check out ringsidebeerstore.com, and I want to thank them for sponsoring the show. Ringsidebeerstore.com. Use the promo code FNP at checkout. You're going to save 25% off. They've got some great shirts. I'm going denim on denim. We've got some awesome tap handles. I got the boxing glove tap handle. I've got the MMA glove tap handle. So make sure you check them out. Ringsidebeerstore.com. There's a link down below in the description. 25% off your order today if you use the promo code FNP. Without further ado, let's keep getting into it. Another great Canadian company, Stardom Sports, out of Ontario. Open since 1988. Make sure you give them a look. I mean, they've got a massive summer blowout sale going on right now. It's the end of the golf season, but you can pick up some pretty good deals. I mean, a Nike Dry Fit Essential half-zip pullover, $44.99 Canadian, great deal. So make sure you give them a look at stardomsports.ca and check them out. Fight Night Picks is brought to you by Vertiball. Head on over to their website. It's vertiball.com. And listen, it's an awesome product. It's a local company out of New Brunswick, Canada. So make sure you support those guys locally as well as Fight Night Picks. But they're the only mountable portable muscle massager. They can stick onto any smooth surface. They've got an industrial strength suction cup. Can support over 100 pounds of pressure. You can get really into those deep knots. I have one here at home. I use it for my back and my shoulders from holding up that Fight Night Picks Pick'em trophy. But listen, make sure you check them out. It's a great product. Like I said, they're recommended by physiotherapists, masseuses, and chiropractors across Canada, the US, UK, and Australia. And they're used by countless professional athletes like Minka Fitzpatrick on screen there, as well as Clellan Farrell of the Raiders. So if you head into the cart, make sure you check them out. So I've got a Vertiball massager in my cart right there. Use the promo code FNP. You're going to save 10% off your order. You're supporting this company here that I'm very passionate about in New Brunswick, Canada, and you're helping out us as well. So make sure you check them out, vertiball.com, promo code FNP, 10% off your order. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. It's time for the Fight Night Picks podcast with your host, Craig.
And Matt.
Alan.
All right, you asked for it. You got him. Matt's here
everyone?
on a Saturday night. Matt, I can't remember the last time you did an episode of Question Mark Kicks. There's a lot of people over in the chat. I really appreciate everybody for tuning in. So as always, now we get called left guy, right guy, whatever. You got Matt on the right, you're right. You got me over on the left. I'm wearing the Canadian tuxedo this week, a little denim on denim. And Matt, there's a reason why I'm wearing this. Everybody always asks, why? Why? And where did the picture come from? Well, you would know if you followed along at Fight Night Picks over on Instagram. That's where all the voting goes for these cards. Now, everybody gets all hard on us. Oh, you guys look at the Topology numbers too much. You look at the votes too much. Don't put too much stock into it. Well, Saturday is your time to vote. We put out the pictures early on, and there's a comment from Booch for Snooch saying, "We own you now, Matt. Matt quit his job, LOL." Hey, you got to hit up the super chat because these comments are going to come in hard, hot, and heavy. And I keep saying hard way too much. I apologize.
It's getting uncomfortable.
This is definitely not the card to say hard. It is a rough card, but we're going to get through it, and there's some fights to look forward to. And like I said, you got to follow along at Fight Night Picks because as we go down through these fights, I'm going to be referencing the votes. We've already got $5 in the super chat from Nige. You were here last week. We appreciate you. Tony West saying, look at that Canadian tuxedo. And Mystic Sosa, oh boy. Nige, you quit, Matt. Well, I mean, now he's here on Fight Night Picks, Question Mark Kicks, SAPT. Good to see you, as well as AJ Gillig, as always, and just my 2 cents. And he says, we can really now get a let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
So, we've got a really interesting card. It might not be the best name value-wise, but there's a lot of fights to get excited about. So, we'll continue on. We got $5 from Robert.
Thank you.
Oh, boy, Robert. And I got to say, Matt's got the golf pullover. We got that from Stardom Sports in the ad. Nige hitting us up with a $10 super chat. We already got $10 into the super chat. But there's all sorts of merch. FightNightPicks.net in the store, so make sure you check that out. I'm not wearing any. Matt's got one of the shirts under the shirt.
Long sleeves.
Holy smokes.
Nice.
And Craig's saying, I got my FNP shirt in the mail today. Thanks.
Nice.
They're good swag. So, let's get down through this. Matt, I forewarned you. The chat's going to get hot and heavy.
Yeah.
Sean hitting us up with the $5 in the super chat. It's getting busy already, so make sure you get your comments in there now. So, first fight on our card, Matt, we differed on our picks here. And I have to say, and I noticed before the show started, a lot of people going down through this one in the chat about how it's pretty much a 50-50. It's a pick 'em bucks. $50 from Mr. Luxury. Holy smokes. The Canadian tuxedo's looking fantastic. You got $5 million on Imavov. Holy smokes. Wow. Good to see, Matt. I appreciate you with the super chat. So I like Imavov. 3 guys, 1 puck hitting us up with $5 in the super chat. It's getting busy already. Keep going with that. And Mr. Appreciative, you're an absolute dingus. So way to go, pal. All right, so we look at this fight, and we were going back and forth on this one. We really couldn't get a good read off of it. And if the super chat keeps going crazy, I'm going to focus on this fight. Don't think I forget about you. Now, Luigi Vendramini, we know how good his jiu-jitsu is. He's a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, not Japanese jiu-jitsu. And we saw it in his first fight against Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. And a lot of people hit me back and forth with the asterisk there next to the 170. Why do you have that for Luigi Vendramini? Well, I can tell you it's because in that fight on short notice at 170, but overall he is a 55er. Now we saw it at the weigh-ins. If you saw the odd camera angle from MMA fighting,
it was weird.
You could see how it was off, so it made a couple of different people look quite a bit taller. But overall, Jessin Ayari is the bigger fighter. I mean, you can see it out of height and out of reach. He's the bigger guy. He also fought at 70 for the majority of his career, less his last fight when he took on a really tough out in Stevie Ray, who unfortunately retired here recently. Wish we got to see more of the Scottish fighter. But overall, Matt, I mean, Jessin Ayari, really good striking. Kind of cover me on that one, because he did look good in a losing effort.
And it was one of those cases where he used to fight, not that he was like a traditional boxer in the exact sense of the word, but he was a guy who he'd come out, he was kind of squared in his stance, and then in his last fight against Stevie Ray, he just kind of came out, not that he just changed his style completely, but he started doing that karate style where he stood sideways, had that great movement, lunging in and out, and I thought he beat Stevie Ray. I thought he beat him pretty much every single round, if I'm being completely honest. I was really surprised when they announced it for Stevie Ray. But Jessin Ayari, I don't think we've seen the best version of him at this stage, or at least yet. I mean, every fight that he has, he does go out there and improve, and I think his striking is starting to catch up to where his grappling is, and yes, he got beat up by Darren Till at 170, but like, that's going to happen. You can't really hold it against him. And Vendramini, there's just some guys you don't want to have a UFC debut against, and Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos is one of those guys. I mean, he could do everything. He could knock you out. He's not bad on the ground. He's just kind of good wherever, and the fact that Vendramini not only was able to take his back for the vast majority of that first round and really not win the round 10-8, but control a guy who at least at the time was in the top 15. It's just a really good sign for a guy. Yes, he lost by devastating knockout too, but it's a good way to get into the UFC. You just hate to see it when there is a prospect who you think has some sort of promise in the future going up against such a killer in their first fight.
And that's it. I mean, for Ayari, you're taking on, well, I mean, you look at it, Jim Wallhead, and then you've got Darren Till, oh boy, and then you're taking on Stevie Ray. So you get an odd amount of competition at 70 and at 55. And I mean, in the fight against Darren Till, totally dominated. He went for a few takedowns of his own, didn't get them, but Darren Till was able to get some. So overall, Till controlled that fight. In the fight against Stevie Ray, I know it gets considered a loss, but pretty well everybody, and we talked about it in the original pick, had Ayari to win. A lot of people high on Vendramini. Over on Topology now, 2,553 total votes, 67% of Vendramini. The odds have shifted a little bit. They started out pretty high on Ayari. He's actually a minus 113 average on best fight odds. You've got Luigi Vendramini at a minus 109. So interesting the way things kind of work that way. If we look over at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, I told you we would. 60% of the voters going with Vendramini, good for 119 of 288 total votes. So interesting there, Matt. Final pick here. Who are you going with?
I think Ayari's got it. I just see his ceiling as being somewhat high going down in the future. He's still fairly young, but Vendramini has a lot of upside. I can see him winning this fight. We didn't even see him at his optimal weight class in his last fight, so I do think the best of Vendramini has yet to be seen, but I'm still going with Ayari. I just think he's a little bit more well-rounded out of the two.
I mean, it is a tough one. You got two guys coming off of such a long layoff, and you can't really get a great idea on them. I mean, I see Trevor Byers saying you can't bet on a guy named Luigi. It's a pretty cool name, but it is a tough one. Everybody seems to be siding with Vendramini. Odds makers, the gamblers, and the public at large over on Fight Night Picks and Tapology. You've got enough people going on this one. You got the Brazilian with the nickname, the Italian Stallion. It's a really tough one for me. I mean, Jessin Ayari, much bigger fighter. Luigi Vendramini, if he's at all cleaned up his striking, like we had said, training in Colorado, I think maybe he has a good shot at this. I'm going to stick with the pick of Luigi Vendramini. But again, this is a fade for me.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't be near it. Artem the Goat keeps saying, why is my fit going so hard? I mean, hey, you got to check us out on Instagram at Fight Night Picks. And there's a reason why at the end of the night. So I want to see what people are thinking on this one. Casey Kenney, Haile Alateng. It's a really, really interesting one because, I mean, Casey Kenney, from what we've seen in the UFC, the one loss to Merab Dvalishvili where, I mean, 12 of 24 total takedowns for Merab. Stuff like that's going to happen.
Exactly.
Haile Alateng, a lot of people are down on him, and I've seen that over the week. But Matt, we talked about it before, and in the prediction, the fact that, holy smokes, Haile Alateng, he has good wrestling, and his striking's not bad either. This makes for a more interesting fight than the odds and the public at large kind of have this one.
It does because, Alateng's going to go for those takedowns to create the scrambles, and we know that Casey Kenney's so good in those scrambles. So, not that Alateng is playing right into Casey Kenney's wheelhouse, but Kenney, I do think, has the answer for a lot of what Alateng can bring to him. If they do stand up striking, I think Kenney's got better volume. I think he's got a little bit better power. I just think he's sort of a more evolved version of Haile Alateng at this point in his career. So I don't really see how Casey Kenney loses this one. I think it's a fun fight just because stylistically they match up for what should be an entertaining fight. But I do see it pretty cut and dry for Casey Kenney.
And I mean, if you're high on Brandon Royval, I mean, big fight coming up against Brandon Moreno, the Assassin Baby. We've been high on the Assassin Baby for some time now. You got to look at that fight. Big win for Casey Kenney over with LFA. For Haile Alateng, I remember we talked about at the start of the week the fact that his first loss as a pro, Song Yadong, his second loss, or not his second loss, his last loss against Kai Asakura, who's lighting the world on fire with Ryzen. If we look over on the Fight Night Picks Instagram account, out of 279 votes, 179 going with Casey Kenney. It's a large margin. Over on Tapology, same deal. And Casey Kenney, one of the biggest favorites on the card, open as a minus 220. That line's dropped to a minus 383 average. That's crazy. And again, I see a lot of people going with Casey Kenney over in the comments section. It seems like that's the way that just about everybody's going. Pepe is saying Casey decision or sub. Master B, Casey's going to be wild, and so on and so forth. Owen Smith, Casey by decision. So it seems like just about everybody going with Casey Kenney. I'm not going to move away from my pick. Again, it's more of a fade type of pick because he's such a big favorite. Exactly. That lines continue to drop. There is value on Haile Alateng. There definitely is. You can't deny that. But it should be a good fight. You've got Casey Kenney.
I do. I just think the scrambles and the cardio is going to be a little bit too much for Alateng. We've seen Casey Kenney fight some of those upper echelon guys, and yes, he lost to Merab Dvalishvili, but that's just because Merab's way, way bigger than him. I mean, stylistically, they do a lot of the same stuff, so I'm really high on Casey Kenney. Maybe some others out there aren't, but I do think he gets it done pretty easily.
And it should be a good fight. That's one of the better ones that's definitely going to fly under the radar as the comments continue to go crazy. Holy smokes. Diego Casas has 50 lineups. That's insane. And Devin Brown... I mean, Devin, there's a chance, man. There's a chance. There's a lot of people that I see on the underground picking Haile Alateng to get the win, especially if the fight goes longer. They think he has a better shot as it continues on. Now, I see it continues to pop up. Who do we have as dogs? Well, you're going to get into one here later on, but it sucks because we picked the guy as a dog, and then that line dropped. Now, Kyle Kelly with the super chat. Love the Canadian tuxedo. Beauty day in Edmonton, Alberta for fights plus 20. Love Kenney by points here. I appreciate you, Kyle Kelly. Almost said Kenney. Pretty close to Casey Kenney. But yeah, it was a good day in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. So we look at this one. Loma Lookboonmee taking on Jinhyu Frey. And it's such an interesting fight because you have the former atomweight champion over with Invicta in Jinhyu Frey. You've got Loma Lookboonmee, who, if she brings it all together, we know what she can do. In the training montages over on the Instagram. We've seen some good stuff from her. I mean, the Hickman brothers, an obvious influence in her game, representing Tiger Muay Thai. And Jinhyu Frey coming out of Fortis MMA. She's got Cheyenne, and I mispronounce her last name every time. And Inside Baseball, well, that was the former, or formerly known as, just like Prince with the symbol. It's Bays. It's Bays. It's not Buys. I know I made the mistake. It is what it is. There's a comment there, Black Rogue, saying Loma is sick. I'm passing. Do you know that she's sick? Is she totally sick? I don't know.
Or is she sick like awesome?
Yeah, she's sick with it. But in this one, I mean, Jinhyu Frey, the former Invicta champ, you've got the how good Loma Lookboonmee's Muay Thai is, but her clinch game's good. Jinhyu Frey, pretty good from the clinch, but she wasn't great in her last time out. What do you make out of this one?
Okay, not that Jinhyu Frey's terrible, or that she's even bad, but I just don't think we've ever really seen a championship quality fighter out of her. I understand she was the atomweight champion over in Invicta, but being an atomweight and then trying to fight at strawweight in the UFC is just a completely different task. And luckily with this matchmaking, Loma Lookboonmee, one of the smaller fighters, and honestly, I know we talked about this in our video as well, she could be a atomweight. If the UFC had decided, okay, ladies, you can both cut to 105, this will be the fight that we make. But I know what I'm going to get from Loma Lookboonmee. She's going to go for it. She's going to use a great Muay Thai. She got decent power for the division and for her size. And I think the power is going to kind of wear on Frey as the fight goes on. Because again, she's fighting someone who's her size. She's not fighting someone bigger than herself. Frey, the problem is, I don't know how she answers the Muay Thai of Lookboonmee. I don't know if she goes for the takedown. I don't know if she tries to out-clinch her. I don't know if she tries to outwear her. I know what I'm going to get from Lookboonmee, and that's a pretty decent striker. Whereas with Jinhyu Frey, she can kind of do everything. I just don't really know what she's going to decide to do.
Best comment of the night from Adams JTX. Who wins in a fight, Wayne from Letterkenny or John Jones? Well, John Jones is a hard no in that fight. Wayne beats him every time.
Yeah.
So, we
Good
look at this
question.
one, and I mean, I see it from Owen Smith. Frey looked big and healthy at the weigh-ins. Yeah, again, maybe you watch that side angle. Loma, obviously the smaller fighter, but again, both of these fighters, natural atomweights, moving up to 15, and I say 15, I mean, you're only going up to strawweight. But in this one, it should be a good fight. I'm going to stick with the pick of Loma Lookboonmee, but it's not one of those ones that I go with all that much or that confidently. Again, this fight, your first fight on the card, not so much. The Kenney fight, you can definitely see advantages for Haile Alateng, but definitely going with Kenney.
Yeah.
So, Matt, I've got Loma Lookboonmee in this fight. Again,
So do I.
if Jinhyu Frey wins, kudos to her. Don't say I didn't tell you that she had a good opportunity. It's just with her, it's a lot more single shots thrown from southpaw. She throws a nice straight down the pipe. But apart from that, we don't see a lot of leg kicks. We'll see it, but it's not the most crisp. It doesn't set up a whole lot either. And those are some of the issues that I have.
It's not really the forefront of her game. I just don't know what Frey's going to do at range with Lookboonmee. So I think it's going to be pretty cut and dry in that aspect.
Should be a good fight. All right, Matt. This is my favorite fight on the
This is a
card.
good fight.
I put the video out for this one on Instagram with @FightNightPicks. And in saying that, I got to back myself up. Because if we look over on @FightNightPicks on the Instagrams for this fight, 112 votes for Loma Lookboonmee. And you have 83 for Jinhyu Frey. So the public going with Loma here. And if we look at the odds just quickly, because you can't forget about those, Loma Lookboonmee, the favorite. That line dropped quite a bit until yesterday morning. She was about a -155. She's now about a -136. So some late money coming in on the fighter from the States in Jinhyu Frey. All right, Matt, so we move on. Jordan Williams, Nassourdine, Imavov. I'm going to finally answer specific chiropractic CT's question. Dog sniper the card for betting purposes? Sorry. Dog sniper the card for betting purposes? Because you're yelling it if you type in all caps. Now, Sage Lawrence, I agree with you. We had Nassourdine Imavov at the start of the week. He was the underdog. He's now the favorite. There's been so much late money dropping on this fight for for Imavov. And for Jordan Williams, there were a lot of people that were critical under the original video stating the fact that he was a state champion wrestler as a junior in high school. He was a JUCO champ as well. I don't think that holds a whole lot of water in this fight. Maybe it does now. Here, if we want to make some opportunities, because we always try to, Jordan Williams has fought half-decent competition. He's lost by knockout at 70 and not so much at 85. You saw that split decision loss over on Dana White's Contender Series last season. 3 of his last 4 fights on Contender Series knocked out Tim Karen, overturned because of the weed. And then you got the split decision, and then you got a big knockout win this past summer over jiu-jitsu specialist in Rodriguez. Now, this fight, it's interesting because you get the long, looping, heavy shots from Jordan Williams, kicking it old school, and he does throw hard, but it's just, with a fighter like Imavov, I feel like he'd be able to at least kind of snipe. Now, we've seen Imavov in some of his last fights on the regional scene over in Europe. He's been susceptible to some of the straight shots up the middle. We saw it with Jonathan Munier in his last fight with Aries, the fact that he just went straight down the pipe, hit Imavov, rocked his head back, and Imavov just kept pushing the pace and pushing the pressure. So it should be a really good fight. And I've seen a lot more people going heavy on Jordan Williams as of late. So final prediction, do you have any different, do you have a change of mood, or are you thinking differently about this one?
So you have two guys who both are not afraid to eat a shot to give a shot. The problem is Imavov is the much more technical out of the two. If he does decide, okay, I'm going to start, chaining in my takedowns. Okay, we're going to get back up. Now it's striking, taken down. Like, if he can just really switch up the levels that this fight takes place at on Jordan Williams, I think he'll be able to get the win. Because Williams, you know what you're getting. He's going to go forward. He's going to eat a lot of big shots. But he is always in it until he lands that big knockout punch. It's kind of the fun thing about this fight. This fight could be one of those Andrei Arlovski, Travis Brown, like one-round crazy fights where one guy ends up losing via back fist. Like, it's a crazy fight, but I do think Imavov, going further, he has such a higher ceiling out of these two. I can see him, I'm not going to make any predictions, beating an Edmund Shabazian or something, but I can see him kind of following along those lines of being a slightly above average hyped up prospect, where they're not at that like Sean O'Malley, Israel Adesanya level.
Nathaniel Wood.
Yeah, but at one of those levels where like, okay, if you watch a lot of MMA, you're excited when this young guy fights, and I think Imavov fits that pretty well.
Both of us going with Nassourdine, Imavov in this one. And like I said, Matt, from the start, I mean, you look at the odds. Imavov at this point, he's a minus 128, minus 130 favorite. Open as a plus 165 to start this one off. So somebody saw something. Somebody told me you had a boyfriend who looked like the girlfriend. That was a great song. Now, Jordan Williams, minus 215. He opened. He's a plus 105 right now. If we look over on Fight Night Picks at the total votes, at a 275 total votes, 143 on the French fighter, the sniper, Nassourdine Imavov. OJ's hitting us up with a $5 super chat.
OJ.
You ordered food to watch Fight Night Picks. What did you eat?
Can win 8K. That's nice.
Did you get anything good? All right, so we're going with Imavov. Seems like people are split, but I see a lot of people going with Nassourdine Imavov as well. So we move on to the next fight.
Okay.
Now, seems like a lot of people see this either way, and I have to say this right now, full disclosure. When Culibao was coming in and taking on a really tough out in Jalen Turner, you had the salty Panda Express.
Good call.
You had the salty record of Jalen Turner to look at and go, hey, well, is Josh Culibao going to have an opportunity? Moving from 45 to 55. He did not. He got smoked. Now, I've seen a couple different comments out there. The fact that Josh Culibao trained in a cabin in the woods with Alexander Volkanovski for weeks. He looked shred city for this fight. And, he's going to have these great opportunities to win. Charles Jourdain had the chance to not just train in the States like he did for his last fight. He was living with his girlfriend's family, taking quarantine as it came. Now, I gotta say this too. There's been a couple people saying that Andre Fili is no good. Give your head a shake. Andre Fili is like that litmus test as to, can you get into the top 15 and beat Andre Fili or not? So that is what it is. Now, Charles Jourdain did not pass that test, but he did pass the test of knocking out Doo Ho Choi at home in Busan. So that was a pretty big win. The fight against Fili was a split decision, and it wasn't that close. It was close, but it wasn't that close. Now, I see a lot of people going with Jourdain. We've got Ryan Bernach saying, let's go Jourdain. We've got, who else? No, please, Jourdain's going to win by KO. MMA on Point. You don't have to say that. MMA on Point. Oh, boy. Go check them out. But in total, and as we look at this fight, Charles Jourdain, with that back left foot, he can send somebody to the hospital.
Not even. It's his boxing, too. Like, at most ranges with striking, he's really good. And people forget, if you want to talk about how good Andre Fili is, like, I didn't think he beat Sadiq Youssef, but I thought he gave him a really hard fight. And I think really highly of Sadiq Youssef. So if you're able to have, not a draw, but if you go to a split decision with a guy like Sadiq Youssef and you're in the fight for really no matter where it goes, I'm going to think really highly of you. And the fact that, let's get into it. The fact that Andre Fili was able to have a really close fight with Sadiq Youssef and then have a really close fight with Jourdain, it doesn't say that Jourdain is on that level just yet, but it shows that his trajectory is in the perfect way. I mean, there's not a lot of Canadian prospects that we can get really hyped up about right now. I mean, TJ Laramie was the guy who a lot of people thought, okay, if someone goes on a run, it could be him. Not saying Jourdain is going to be that guy to win the title or anything, but he's one of the better Canadian fighters fighting in the UFC right now who you could see, okay, they might be in the top 15 in the near future.
The one thing that I don't like about this, and we talk about odds moving and shifting and whatnot, Charles Jourdain opened a minus 300. That line dropped to a minus 400. He's now a minus 471 average on best fight odds. You get Josh Culibao opening as a plus 250, now at a plus 356. Does that concern you at all? Do you have any questions? No, you don't think Culibao has any chance?
I think the guy who got knocked out early in his last fight is probably going to get finished. I just think Jourdain, he's a guy with a really high ceiling. He's got an exciting fighting style. And not that the UFC is really going to push him, but if you keep on having fights where it's okay, it's a fight of the night contender. It's a fight of the night contender. It's a fight of the night contender. There's a reason guys like that move up the rankings really fast. Whereas, and I hate to name drop this guy because I think he's got a fight coming up soon. Whereas if you're a guy like Elizio, or not Elizio, Theodoro.
We bring that on and he forgets
I know
words.
it's bad. There's some guys who, when you do have that fight of the night style, you're going to move up the rankings faster. Where if you do have, and not just name drop Corey Anderson, but if you fight like Corey Anderson, like that was his argument in the first place. It's, I'm not getting finishes, the UFC doesn't respect me. And then when he did start to get finishes, he starts to move up. So I think Jourdain, if he can go out there and put on a really great performance, the sky's the limit for him.
So if we look over at the picks, at Fight Night Picks on Instagram, 177 votes for the Canadian Charles Jourdain. You've got 24 for Josh Culibao. I worry about it just a little bit where those odds are so skewed on Charles Jourdain. There's no value there, but it should be a good one. And Doors and .com says, and fighter from Montreal will win automatically no matter what. Nope. All right, so this should be an interesting fight, but Matt, I mean, this is such a good fight. You've got the natural-born killer, Carlos Condit, and all biases aside, Matt called it in our original video, the fact that Matt's a huge homer for Carlos Condit.
Yeah.
Things like that will never change. And
Matt
I mean,
Brown, Tim Means, and Carlos Condit. No matter what happens, I'm going to be cheering for them.
so we look at this fight, and you've got the former UFC interim welterweight champ. He's fought some really good competition. You've got Court McGee, who, I mean, again, he beat Robert Whittaker in 2013.
Okay.
Now, he had that period of time where he took time off. He was able to win some, lose some, but it's mostly losing some here lately for Court McGee. The thing is, the competition, and I get it, and I see the comments out there, the fact that Court McGee, it hasn't been the upper echelon of competition like it has been for Carlos Condit. But I have to say, when you're fighting up-and-comers like Sean Brady, I mean, did you see Sean Brady's last fight? Pretty darn good performance by Sean Brady. And if you want to go back, I mean, we can look at it. Diego Lima, you lose the split. Could have gone either way. He beats Alex Garcia, a really good wrestler. You lose to Sean Strickland 2 years ago. Hey, man, Sean Strickland, until the Elizio fight, pretty darn good.
And he really likes to train.
And then he lost to Ben Saunders. And I mean, hey, Ben Saunders coming over from Bellator is not the same Ben Saunders that knocked out Jake Ellenberger, is not the same Ben Saunders that ended his career and fought Lyman Good in a fight for the ages that we needed more in 2008 and less in 2020 or 19 or whatever, 2019. So we look at this one, and I see what MMA on Point's saying. I mean, yeah, you feel like McGee's probably going to take it. I feel like, you know, the band Humphrey McGee's probably going to get all up in this shiznit, and they're also going to agree with me in going with Court McGee.
Okay, yes, Court McGee's probably going to win, but this is really sad. I have another group chat with a bunch of my friends who are trying to get into MMA, and I was like, oh, guys, I'm really excited. Carlos Condit's fighting this weekend. And then I get a bunch of texts saying, why are you excited for a guy who's 2-8 in his last 10 to fight? And it just kind of hits me. No one remembers just how good he was. Like, Carlos Condit was one of the scarier strikers in the UFC at one point. I mean, the double flying knee on Stun Gun, the left hook on Dan Hooker. Like, there was a time where Carlos Condit, you don't get the nickname the Natural Born Killer without being like an exceptionally violent MMA fighter, and that's what Carlos Condit was.
Or you give it to yourself. Like, like I'm sure Rashad Coulter didn't ask anybody to go, hey,
Daywalker.
Start calling me Daywalker.
That's true. But I just think Carlos Condit, people forget just how good he used to be. And yes, this is a stupid pick, but I think he can kind of turn back the clock. I think if he's ever going to win another UFC fight, this is the one that's tailor-made for him. Court McGee, a guy's a little bit older. And yes, Court McGee has that style where it's, okay, if I get a hold of you, I can drag you to the ground. But he doesn't have the explosiveness that a lot of the other guys who Carlos Condit's fought with that wrestling acumen have at this stage in his career. So I'm going to hold on to hope that Carlos Condit can do it one more time and hopefully just retire at the end of this. Get the win, go off into the sunset, everything will be nice.
So, from Naiji, I mean, saying Carlos Condit on the card, you know what that means, just bleed. We also had a good comment from Matt the Mick who says, why does your beer cost so much?
Tax.
It actually doesn't, well, yeah, taxes. Taxes are really high in Canada, if you didn't know. They're really high on the East Coast, and it's actually cheap in New Brunswick. A 2-4 is $35.99. Now, we got a $100 super chat from Jack Stapleton.
Thank you.
Holy smokes, Jack Stapleton. Wow.
Jack, that's very nice.
Do you want us to say anything?
Like, well, yeah, we can, like, shout out your friend.
I mean...
This isn't Cameo, but, like...
Matt has a trophy from last week, if you want to see that. But, Jack, we really appreciate you. That's insane. Jack. It could happen 21, saying Jack Stapleton, wow. And it could happen 21. I mean, it could happen with the champ you're hanging out with on Instagram. So that's somebody to follow on IG, is It Could Happen 21. Jack Stapleton, baller. We really appreciate you. So... let's get back into the swing of things just quickly, because if we look at the odds on this one, I think they're just where they need to be. Court McGee opened a plus 120. Now he's at a minus 136 over on best fight odds. For Carlos Condit, open minus 140. Now at a plus 113 average. And I see stuff like that. I mean, I've seen that pretty much all week. If we look over on @FightNightPicks on Instagram, right down the middle, you've got 110 votes for Condit. You've got 106 for Court McGee. Does any of this change your opinion on this fight?
No matter what, I'm going to like Carlos Condit.
Yes, we get $1 from MMA on Point.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm going to love Carlos Condit probably until the day I die. And that's never going to change no matter what. Yes, Court McGee's probably going to win this. I'm going to be very open about this right now, that if I really cared about this trophy for like prediction purposes and needed to get one stage ahead of Craig, I don't even think it's possible at this point. But I think if Carlos Condit's going to win, it's going to be tonight. So Carlos Condit going to be able to get it done.
Well, Matt, I mean, I got to keep it with a little bit of denim on denim. I'm going McGee. You're going Condit. Now we get into a fight that I am not excited for in the least. No, you know what? Scratch that. I'm sort of excited about this. Now, I've had people hit me up in the DMs, and I'm not going to mention you by name in the chat, but I've seen a few of you in the chat, and that's fine. Fight Night Picks, Craig Allen FNP. Now, Dequan Townsend. I mean, he's had 3 fights in the UFC. None of them have been good, and he's lost every round so far. So that's not great. Now, the competition level, it hasn't been bad, and that's the thing where it worries me a little bit. I mean, Bevon Lewis, you go back and watch his fight with Uriah Hall, and yikes. I mean, he was winning that fight until he wasn't. But I mean, for Dequan Townsend, he comes in, he has a fight against Dalcha Champ from EFC, gets knocked out. He fights Bevon Lewis, he gets beat from bell to bell, and then he fights Devin Clark a couple weeks later up a weight class, and he didn't look good. So, I mean, what do you make out of it? I can't tell. I mean, I see a lot of people that are saying, well, you know, at the end of his punches, he does quite well. He lands a good amount of power. And listen, from his regional fights, I'll tell you a couple good things about Dequan Townsend. Shovel punches, something that I like in MMA. Nice shovel punches. Nice knees, but it's always against slower opponents that don't move all that well. And for Dusko Todorovic, he gets hit. I mean, he will get hit. He'll get into a firefight. Exactly. It's going to cost him against the right opponent. I just don't think Dequan Townsend's the guy.
Okay, Dusko, I think you really set this up perfectly. Dusko's going to make this fight closer than it has to be. And I think that's the best way of saying it. Because you know if he goes out there, really uses his skills, mixes it up, and makes this an MMA fight, he should be able to win just about anywhere or any range that this fight takes place in. But what's probably going to happen is he's going to clip Dequan, Dequan's going to clip him, and then it's just kind of going to devolve into a brawl. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. I think it's going to be very entertaining. But I just think Dusko, against guys like this, sort of your entry-level MMA fighters, or not MMA fighters, but your entry-level UFC guys who are in the top 15, they're not even really in the top 25, then I think Dusko should probably be able to beat them.
I mean, do you see an opportunity for a finish for Todorovic in this fight?
I do. I just think Dequan does leave himself open, and the cardio is not the best. And as the fight moves on, I do think Dusko, if he can kind of wear on him against the cage, if he can sort of beat him up as the fight moves on, I just think he'll slowly wear on that gas tank at Dequan Townsend, probably get a finish later on in the fight. I don't think he's just going to go over there and run him over. I don't think, if Bevon Lewis can't do it, if other guys like that have trouble finishing you, I don't think Dusko Todorovic is just going to run out there and steamroll him. But I do think stylistically it's a really good fight for him.
Todorovic open a minus 305. He's now a minus 384 over on best fight odds. For Townsend, open a plus 225. Now trending around a plus 300. Over on Fight Night Picks, I mean, Matt, read it.
So we currently have 156 votes for Dusko Todorovic and only 58 for Dequan Townsend out of a 272. It just kind of shows you what we've been going off of lately. That, yes, Dequan, he could get that finish if it does have, you know, if they do have that crazy brawl in the first round, sort of, you know, Travis Brown, Andre
you keep talking about
I know, because I just watched it the other day and I was like, damn, that's a really good fight. It could be kind of, not Diego Sanchez, Gilbert Melendez, but kind of something like that where it's just, okay, one guy gets hit, the other guy gets hit, we'll see what happens. But I think that's Dequan's best chance to win, probably.
And the two things that we have to say, first thing, thank you, Booch for Snooch with the super chat.
Thanks
you won a big bag last week. Well, that's great. And listen, we're not always going to have winning weeks. You got to know that. I mean, Matt went 9-2. I went 7-4. I didn't change any of my picks, and I didn't change any yet so far. The other thing that we have to say, and I've seen it a couple times in the comments, and I mentioned in the video, the fact that Dequan Townsend, both of his brothers actually were killed in August.
That's awful.
That's a shame to see. It has no bearing on this fight. Maybe you see, a more motivated Dequan Townsend. You never want to say that the guy doesn't or shouldn't have a spot in the UFC. We haven't seen it in his last 3 performances, but from a personal standpoint, good to see him getting another fight in the UFC, and best of luck to him. So, bar down, Snizzy, you're an absolute donkey. You can get out of here, but I'll leave your comment there. Kyler Phillips taking on Cameron Else. This is an interesting fight because I see a lot of people picking Cameron Else. And I get it. I mean, if you look and watch his fights on the regional scene, he's finishing guys. He's super aggressive. His striking is on point for the first minute and a half. And he looks like he could be a really good fighter. For Kyler Phillips, the knock on him is, as the fight goes on, does he get tired in the 3rd round? Will he start to get worn down? The thing that's really telling for me in this fight is the fact that if Gabriel Silva couldn't submit Kyler Phillips, I have a hard time believing that Cameron Else can. Now, I know you're going to see it over in the comments, the fact that Cameron Else, he trains at the BMF Ranch, he's trained a bit at Jackson Wink, he spends a lot of time down in New Mexico, and I get it. But Kyler Phillips, holy smokes, I mean, in his last performance, he looked really good. I mean, Gabriel Silva didn't really have much of an option in that fight. He couldn't really get started. And that's to say, Kyler Phillips will also start quickly. So you got a fast starter in Phillips, a fast starter in Cameron Else, a really good preview prediction for this one. And I have to throw this out there now. Make sure you check out the from Sean Bitter over with Cage Side Press. And I mean, Jay Anderson does a great job over there too. Had the chance to hang out with him with UFC Moncton. But Sean does a good job of those previews, so they're always welcome to the UFC. They're a couple days before the event. I have to shout that out now because I spend a lot of time reading those, and Sean is also a good follow on Twitter. So, in his prediction, that was kind of how he set it up. I mean, you have 2 fast starters. Are you going to get the older fella from England who was billed as 29 years old 29 years old until today, and now he's 33? Or do you have Kyler Phillips, a younger fighter with a really high ceiling? And the other thing I want to say, because I've talked way too much, is the fact that the UFC always puts out those videos of these are the 4 fighters you should watch. Yeah. Cameron Else wasn't the fighter. Kyler Phillips was. Not that has any bearing on this, but you have to think maybe a little bit.
I mean, Cameron Else can get the win. It's not one of these cases where they're just feeding him to a Kyler Phillips. But Kyler Phillips, from what we know, his striking's absurd. And he does get tired as the fight goes on. And I do think that this fight comes down to cardio more than any other on the card. Because I can tell you for probably the first round and a half, Kyler Phillips is going to be the more explosive of the two. And he's going to be able to get off on his striking. But any point after that, I think Else can really sneak into this fight.
Derek S., he's not 29 years old. Go on the UFC's website. They've got him as 33. Sage Lawrence knows. I saw you in the chat. And Derek S. saying he was born in 1991. Listen, I grappled with the stupid age thing all week. Let me tell you. Sherdog, Tapology, ESPN.com. They all said he was 29 years old. Go back and watch his fight with Bama on the regional scene. And in there, it said that he was what?
33.
29 at the time. No, he's 29. So you add up, he's 33, and on the UFC's website now, they have him listed as 33 years old. To answer Frankie56 question, I went through there a couple weeks ago. Amherst, Nova Scotia. Don't bring your bees from New Brunswick to Nova Scotia. There's a sign in Amherst for that on the highway. It's weird, but it's true. Look it up.
It is.
So, we look at this fight. I mean, Kyler Phillips is way too big of a favorite for my liking. So, to me, it's a total pass. I would have zero action on this. He's way too big of a favorite. Open to minus 275, now at a minus 437. So, yeah, if you want to say that there's value on Cameron Else at a plus 332, I hear you. I get you. I agree with you. But, I mean, overwhelmingly, most people are going with Kyler Phillips. Over on the Fight Night Picks Instagram, you've got 60 total votes for Kyler Phillips to 51 for Else. Has your pick changed at all during this week?
I still think Kyler Phillips is probably going to be able to get this one done. I think he's an exciting guy in the UFC right now. And he's not at that top tier prospect level, but he's a guy, if he can put together, 2, 3, 4 exciting fights in a row, I do think we'll be seeing a lot more of him down the line.
And I mean, Adam Stahlberger, was that right? Saying fade, LOL. Yeah, it's a huge fade. You got to fade.
Yeah,
so
not worth it.
Let's move forward. I mean, it's an interesting fight, but this is probably the most interesting fight on the card. And we got about 22 minutes before the card starts, so we got to whip through the last 3 and then go back down through, and we'll give you the last of the picks. A, want to thank everybody for tuning in. B, Booch for Snooch, Jack Stapleton, and Mr. Luxury hitting us up with a $50 and $100 super chats. You people are wild, and we appreciate you, and maybe we can get Matt on more often for question mark kicks. This fight should have been the main event instead of the main event that we have, because both of these fighters are ranked higher than Holm and a really tough out in Irene Aldana. But overall, I mean, Julianna Pena in her last fight, the comeback fight, she took on Nico Montano, who was ranked, 15th at the time? She's not ranked anymore, and there's about as many fighters in the women's bantamweight division as there are flyweights in the men's division, 16 and a half. So overall, what do you get out of Julianna Pena? You know how good the grappling is. She had that nice shiner in the fight against Montano, but overall dominated the majority of that fight.
Yeah.
And for Germaine de Randamie, can you get a better striker?
Okay, to me, this fight is just round 2 of Germaine de Randamie versus Aspen Ladd. Now, I think Aspen Ladd is a different kind of grappler than Julianna Pena, but I do think we can take a lot from that fight and kind of bring that analysis towards this one, because if Julianna Pena has any chance of winning, she's going to have to take the fight to the ground. And I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know already, but Germaine de Randamie, and I am going to reference that Ladd fight again, the first punch she threw in that fight took Ladd off of her feet and made her do a 180 and face plant. Now, it was a bit of an early stoppage. It was kind of an extreme reaction to the punch that she got hit by, but she still got dropped by an absolute clean right hand by de Randamie. De Randamie's going to be the better striker in pretty much every fight she's ever in. And I've seen her a lot in the media this week being like, hey, we all know what Amanda Nunes' weakness is. It's if I had Division I wrestling background, I'd probably be able to beat her. But the problem is, if de Randamie was that good at wrestling, it would probably take a little bit from her striking. So de Randamie's really, not that she's been talking a big game, but she has been talking a big game. And she believes that with just this win, she's right back in title contention. I think if the UFC is as smart as I believe they probably are, if Aldana beats Holly Holm, then yes, they'll give Irene Aldana the title shot. New face, hasn't fought Amanda Nunes yet. It just makes it makes sense. If Holly Holm wins the main event and Germaine de Randamie wins this fight, I'm telling you right now, they're going to make those two fight each other, and Amanda Nunes is just going to fight someone else in the meantime at 145.
And that's the remix to Ignition, the original women's featherweight fight. That's a terrible, terrible reference by me, and I apologize for it. But we look at this fight between de Randamie and Julianna Pena. If we look at the votes at Fight Night Picks, you got 167 total votes for Germaine de Randamie, 44 for Julianna Pena. The odds on this one, I like them. I mean, you got Germaine de Randamie open to minus 185. The line jumped up. Pena was a favorite for a little bit, and then all the late money coming in on de Randamie. She's a minus 155 to this point. For Julianna Pena, about a plus 123 average over on best fight odds, which is fair. But yeah, I see this as Germaine de Randamie's fight. And I mean, Julianna Pena, she's talked a pretty big game. She really has. I mean, really slighted Megan Anderson if you watch some of those post-fight or pre-fight interviews. But yeah, I mean, I've got de Randamie, and I don't see this one for Julianna Pena whatsoever.
I don't either. I do have de Randamie winning this fight. If you want an underdog pick, though, this is a great one to choose, because Pena stylistically is a horrible matchup for de Randamie. Now, I don't think she's going to be able to get her down to the ground, but if she is able to for really any period of time, I understand Valentina was able to sub Julianna Pena, but I don't think pretty much anyone else is going to be able to do that to to Pena. So I think de Randamie, the striking's gonna be too much, the clinch work's gonna be a lot of work, and I just see it going for her.
Jack Stapleton with the $200 super chat. I don't even know what to say. That's a lot. You kind of stopped the show. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Jack.
All right. Wow. I'm gonna move on to the next fight. And in this one, I mean, we're almost getting kind of cut for time, but at this point, I mean, you have Yorgan Castro taking on Carlos Felipe. Felipe in the fight against Sergey Spivak, it's a totally different fight than this one with Yorgan Castro. So ultimately, I think there's more of a chance for Felipe in this fight than I did against Spivak. I mean, you got Spivak, the striking's decent, but again, like we said, the fact that Spivak had that Sambo background, that really ultimately won it out for him. But Carlos Felipe in the boxing exchanges certainly has an opportunity. Nige, I mean, how much until Matt quits? We got to give him what he makes during the week. We're not going to put a number on it, but
he's trending in the right direction.
But I mean, in terms of this fight, Yorgan Castro, Carlos Felipe, to kind of round this one out, Yorgan Castro striking in tight, definitely very nice. As long as he doesn't mess up his foot or his lower leg, I think he has an opportunity. This is probably a fight where I might stay away from it a bit. I mean, all the money's pretty well come in on Felipe to round out the week. He opened a minus 270, dropped down to a minus 340 at one point, and now De Castro is at a minus 226 as we speak. So, I mean, there is that. But yeah, ultimately, it seems like everybody's going with with Yorgan Castro. I agree.
Yorgan Castro, I thought in the Greg Hardy fight looked pretty good up until he did break his foot. I know he lost that fight, and it's underwhelming because everyone, well, not everyone, but it seems to be a lot of people would like to see Greg Hardy lose sooner rather than later. But I think Yorgan Castro, as long as he can keep his bones right, he should be able to win this fight. He's the faster guy. I know he weighed in a little bit heavier than I thought he would. I thought we would see kind of a lighter version of him because in that last fight, he was sort of stagnant after he broke his foot. But I thought we'd see a lighter version. He weighed in 261. I think he is going to be able to get the win, but DeCastro, I just don't really know where I can set his ceiling in the UFC and at what point I'm going to start saying, okay, this guy's going to cause him trouble.
All right, so the total votes over on Tapology to 269. We have 176 for the really tough out in Yorgan Castro, 44 total votes for Carlos Felipe. GamerBod with the $50.
Wow.
Love the denim, love that Matt's here, love the info, nothing but love for you guys. Well, I appreciate you, GamerBod. Now let's round this one out with our main event pick, and I get it. Pretty divisive over on the Fight Night Picks Instagram page. 61% of all the votes going for Holly Holm. And I get it. I mean, I can see that for Irene Aldana being the underdog, and the odds have been kind of close right now. Holly Holm open to -110. She's now -130. I'm sure that's actually probably a little bit more money out of the more casual audience that are kind of waking up and realizing that Holly Holm's fighting today. So that's probably why you've seen a bit of a... I don't want to say a decline, but a decline in the odds, or they've been going further and further Holm's way. But for Irene Aldana, I mean, she's a pretty darn good fighter. Her boxing's on point. MMA is on point. These super chats are unreal. It's wild.
What a segue.
But yeah, overall in this fight, I think it's a really good fight. Earlier on in the week, we kind of focused on the fact that Holly Holm, if she's going to win, she's probably going to clinch up. She's probably going to push it up against the cage. If she can work some of the takedowns, maybe that's a possibility. Have you changed at all your thoughts on this fight?
Okay, if Holly Holm decides that she's going to make this fight, like, kind of boring, like she did the Raquel Pennington fight, not to call her being a boring fighter, but we've seen that there's kind of two versions of Holly Holm. There's the, I'm going to stand at range and be a volume striker Holly Holm, and then there's the weird kind of, you crack me with a few good shots, so I'm going to really work my clinch, work my ground game, and use my physicality on you. I think if Holly Holm decides that she does want to, play kind of that physical toll on Aldana, wear on her up against the cage like she was against Pennington, because I think Pennington's better in the clinch than Aldana. I think she's much more physically strong than Aldana. So if Holm was able to really get the better of those positions on Pennington, I think she will be able to do the same to Aldana. The problem is, Irene Aldana has really good footwork. She is good at moving on the outside, and for as good as Holly Holm's kicks are, she's not really a leg kicker per se. She's not one who's going to go out there, really work the jab, left hook, and throw those, like, right calf kicks. But she is going to be able to keep up with Aldana, so this fight's going to come down to, okay, do I think Irene Aldana can hold up for 5 rounds and beat Holly Holm in a decision? Probably not. And I am going to switch my pick to Holly Holm, not because I'm cheering for her, not because anything's really changed. I just think that Holly Holm knows how to win these 5-round fights. And against someone who this is her first 5-rounder in the UFC, it's going to be a lot for Aldana to win. I don't see her going out there and knocking out Holly Holm, because the only time I've ever seen that was with Amanda Nunes, who you guys all know how I feel about Amanda Nunes. I believe she's one of the greatest fighters just to ever live. So I think Holly Holm's going to be able to get it done. I would like to see Aldana win just for the sake of the division, because I do think we need new names to fight Amanda Nunes. But I just see it for Holly Holm. It's not the exciting pick. It's not this unique pick. But I just think Holly Holm, the clinch work, and just the frustration that she's going to be able to cause Aldana on the outside is going to be too much for her.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me. And it's one of those ones where, you can play the narrative. Irene Aldana, is it her chance? She's in the prime of her career. She's 32 years of age. You're at the peak physical maturation. I mean, this is the best Irene Aldana you're going to get. Whereas for Holly Holm, 38 years old, is it just going to be totally off a cliff from here? Who knows? I mean, she's been fighting the best of the best, since the Rousey fight. Now, have those fights gone her way? Some of them haven't. 3 of them in a row definitely did not. But she beats the fighters that she's really supposed to beat. These two have a common former opponent that I love to reference, I'm just going to turn my back to this fight now, and Betch Kahea, and they both have wins. Now, Holly Holm, a little bit more impressive than Irene Aldana's, but still big wins for both of them. And in this one, Holly Holm, I'd say a slight favorite. She's less than a 2-1, so there's that. And that late money coming in on her. But again, it's probably from, a more casual audience. Exactly. Over on Fight Night Picks, we look at that total number. Again, 135 votes for Holm, 86 for Aldana. I think it's a really, really tough fight to try and gauge. Because again, Irene Aldana could go in there in the first round and just crack Holly Holm. That could happen. But overall, it should be a great fight. And Matt, like you said, I mean, Holly Holm. I've got Holly Holm here.
I do. I think that there's things that Aldana can do, and Aldana has looked better as of late for sure, especially going back to that her last fight against Ketlin Vieira. I expected Vieira not only to win that fight, but to probably finish Aldana and then move on to a title shot, knowing, you know, that she wasn't going to beat Nunes, but still, she would kind of be that new face moving up. I think Bantamweight's in a decent place right now. I think that there's people like Aspinlad out there. I think there's the Aldanas. JDR is still really good. Like, there is a certain level that I kind of expect from these main events. This fight, hopefully Holly Holm is able to make it an exciting fight, work on the outside, really use her kickboxing and engage a lot in the striking with Aldana. But I think if Holly Holm decides that she just wants to go out there and straight win this fight, I think she will fight very similar to how she did against Pennington.
All right, Matt. So we're going to whip it through the entire card. Again, cards on the table. A, it's not the best in terms of name value. B, the odds aren't that great on a lot of these fights. So we got to kind of go through them. I know people are asking for the best three. Jack Stapleton really asking for the best three. Joey Sink hitting us up with $99.99 in the super chat. That's insane. I mean,
people are very nice.
We're way up there in the super chat. So Matt does have to quit his day job, and maybe make sure you check out Fight Night Picks, the store. Ewan keeps saying somebody just donated $300. Why didn't it show up? I don't know. But let's make our final picks. We got Vendramini, Ayari. Again, this is the least confident pick on the card. I have Vendramini.
I have
Ayari. We move forward. We both have Kenney in this fight. There's an opportunity for Haile Alateng, but both going with Kenney. We've got Loma Lookboonmee in this one. In our next fight, we both have the French fighter making his debut, Nassourdine Imavov. Then we have Charles Jourdain to get the win over Josh Culibao. Again, we split here. I've got Court McGee.
Carlos Condit till the day I die.
We continue on. We both have Dusko Todorovic in this one. Kyler Phillips, but again, the odds are way too far apart here. Germaine Randamie to get the win over Julianna Pena. Yorgan Castro to get the win over Carlos Felipe. And Matt, you're going all day with Holly Holm.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. So we really appreciate everybody in the super chat. This has been insane. Fight Night Picks just keeps growing with this kind of stuff.
That's wild.
And really want to thank everybody that's tuned in because that's been crazy. Lorthos the Legend going #free Matt. Hey, we got to do that stuff. But yeah, overall, maybe not the best card. I see the comment from Artem the Goat. Casey Kenny's like an off-brand TJ Dillashaw. Needs a little bit more power on his shots, but maybe.
Yeah.
Again, more #free Matt.
Well,
but
thank you guys.
Overall, this should be an interesting card. It's a late card. I mean, we're almost done the show, and it's 8:30 local, so that's kind of crazy. But overall, I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be a great one. And yeah, that super chat went insane.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Again, the interaction with us and you guys makes this so much better, and we appreciate it so much. It's amazing.
So Matt's got to be here next Saturday if we've learned anything. I'm really looking forward to this, and Matt, we have to give everybody what they want because you have to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, Matt. And as we always say, let's get in.
Ladies and gentlemen, recorded in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, it's time for the Fight Night Picks podcast with your host, Craig
and Matt.
Allen.